The New Testament has some 160 some odd mentions of first. So I'm not going to do all of those either. I can't. I don't have the time for it in this setting, and I wouldn't put you through all of that. That would be terrible. So the way I've narrowed this down is I want to look at a few of them in the book of Matthew. So it's the first of the year. All of these firsts coming up, a new start. I want to look at a few of these in Matthew, and let's see if we can pick up some useful information or some guidance or something along the way for us here. And obviously, these are not all of them. These are really just a few. There's a lot of others. You know, if you want to go to the Old Testament, Passover was supposed to be the establishment of a new year. So Passover in the Jewish calendar falls at Jewish New Year, roughly. Paul in the New Testament admonished that prayer should be first of all. And there's a lot of other really great, notable firsts. So I don't want you to think that I'm picking out the most important or in any order of importance. In fact, these are just a few that's in Matthew, and I'm going to read them to you, or you can read with me. I'm going to try to have them on the screen here, but you can read them with me. We're going to look at these in order of their appearance in the book of Matthew. And of course, this is certainly not all of the mentions of the word first, even in the book of Matthew. We're just going to kind of work through that. And as I read them, I'm going to offer some comments and see if we can pick up some things here that might help us and propel us into a new year with a fresh start and fresh eyes and a new sense of not only urgency, but a new sense of desire, a new sense of purpose, a new sense that God really does love you and that He's for you. He wants the best for you. Let's begin by going to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5 is going to be the first one. And let's see. There it worked that time. All right. Matthew 5 and verses 23 and 24. And some of these are going to be multiple verses just to kind of give us a touch of the context that's there to try to help us understand all of this. So, Matthew 5, 23 and 24 says, therefore, and this is the New King James Version, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Great instructions, understanding that there's an importance on our relationship with each other, that our connection to each other is important even as it relates to our relationship with God. Understand forgiveness is a big part of all of this. If we're going to be connected to one another, if we're going to work together as a family, as a body, if you will, then there has to be the understanding that we are going to bear with one another. We're going to forgive one another readily and quickly. We're not going to hold grudges. We're going to realize we're all human and we all make mistakes. Sometimes we have bad days. Sometimes things come out differently than we intended. Sometimes we've got other influences that are moving in our emotions in the moment, and things don't come out the way we would like for them to. So we love one another and we forgive one another. So the context is, if you're bringing an offering, if you're coming before God and you've got something to bring to Him, lay before Him, stop. If you remember not that you have something against someone, but that someone has something against you, go and make it right. First. You can say it with me. First. first. All right. Moving on. Matthew 6, next chapter, verses 31 to 34. Matthew 6, 31 to 34. A little bit longer reading, but not much. So read along with me. Therefore, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. The thinking here, and the context, I guess I should say, is the understanding that you shouldn't be anxious for anything. This Matthew 6 is the Sermon on the Mount. Well, it's a part of it. Very, very long, lengthy message by Jesus to a crowd, and bringing out things that are, I don't want to say entirely countercultural, although some of it could be taken that way, but certainly opposite of what one would normally think in that day and time. Love your enemies. Nobody did that. Don't take vengeance. Don't exact vengeance. If someone demands your coat, give them your cloak as well. There's all kinds of things in there that are opposite of what one would normally think in that day, in that place, at that time. And this is this whole concept of understanding where the things that you need come from. Are you trying to take responsibility for all those things yourself? Or are you dependent upon God to help you? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to work. I'm not saying you shouldn't earn money or try to make your way in the world, nor am I saying that you shouldn't have any ambition to be better at what you do, or to even make more money. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, where are the priorities? Are you looking to be self-sufficient, or are you God-dependent? Are you dependent upon yourself, or do you look to God to help you? Do you look to God to be the supplier of your job? Do you understand that working every day is the same as working for Him, even though He's not your direct boss that you look at every day and work for? But at the same time, when we do work, we should work as if we're working for God. He says, don't worry about all these very primal things that you're going to need. What are we going to eat? What do we drink? What do we wear? Do we have a roof over our head? The very lowest of common denominators among humanity. He says, don't you know that God knows you need all those things? He knows that. So understanding that He knows your basic needs, the first thing you should do is not seek all of those things, but seek what? Yeah, the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all of those things, those necessaries of life will be added to you. So don't worry about tomorrow. Those things will happen. You'll get what you need. Just as long as you put God and the kingdom and His righteousness first. The kingdom of God and His righteousness first. All right, let's move on. Next chapter. Matthew chapter 7, verses 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2, 3, 4, and 5. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite. First, there it is, first, remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Oh, still in that same Sermon on the Mount, and still turning some commonly held beliefs and social structures on their head. He says, you don't need to be judging one another. You've got your own problems. You know why? Maybe we would say it this way in the 21st century. Don't condemn your brother's sin because it's different than the sin you have. In other words, how can you see clearly to remove the small thing from your brother's eye when you've got something huge blocking your vision, your own issues? Your own issues are in the way of trying. In other words, sometimes your issues shade your ability to give good judgment. You can't do that because you got to deal with your own issues first. So first, let's take care of our own issues. Let's take care of our own issues. We may not be so quickly to judge others and be harsh in our judgment to others if we are spending our time taking care of our own issues for certain. All right, let's skip ahead now. Clear over to Matthew chapter 19. Matthew 19, 30, and then we're going to also go to Matthew 20 and verse 16. And I do that because they pretty much say the same thing. It's almost as if Jesus is doubling down on what he's saying here. So Matthew 19 and verse 30. Matthew 19 and verse 30 says this, "But many who are first will be last, and the last first." We see first in here several times, right? And this is that whole context where the apostles are saying, "Well, we've left everything. What about us? we've left everything to follow you. What are we going to get? How do we move forward from here when we've left everything?" And he's telling them that if you've left houses, brothers, sisters, fathers, and mothers, you're going to be rewarded here and in eternity. And then he finishes that little thought, or at least inserts in this thought, the first. Many who are first are last, and many who are last are first. And then we go a chapter later, as he's continuing the thought, telling a story, which Jesus always seems to do. And when he gets to the end, he repeats that same sort of thing. So the last will be first, and the first last, for many are called, but few chosen. We live in a world where everybody wants to be first. Everybody can't be first in line. Everybody can't be first to get something. Everybody can't be first to eat. Everybody can't be first in line or first to do a certain thing. Someone is going to be first. I think that's clear. What Jesus is saying is just because you're first doesn't make you best. In fact, many who are first will actually be last. And those who are last will be first. Many are called, few are chosen. First and last. We think first is the winning position. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes last is the winning position. I think it was Simon Sinek who wrote a book years ago. And the title is pretty intriguing. It says, "Leaders Eat Last." Leaders eat last. Concept being, leadership isn't about being first. Leadership is about helping all of those who are with you to achieve and be what they need to be and should be. And the leader oftentimes takes the rear position to make sure that all of those who are with him are well taken care of first. And then takes care of him or herself afterwards. First is not always the winner. Sometimes first is last. And sometimes last is first. I'm not going to go any more on that. Let's keep looking at some of these. A couple of chapters later, Matthew 22, verses 35 to 40. So we're going to turn the page into Matthew 22, verses 35 through 40. You can read along with me there. "Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, 'Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?' Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind." This is the, you can say it with me, first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. What Jesus is saying is if you can do these two consistently, regularly, all the time, you got it. Everything hinges on these two commandments. And the first one, the most important in this case, is what? Love God with your heart, soul, mind. Another place adds strength to that list. The point is, put God first. God is first in everything. But that doesn't mean the second shouldn't be done. The second is important. It's like the first one. And you'll love your neighbor as yourself. That's an Old Testament command. And this is where the lawyer asks him, "Who is my neighbor?" The reason he's asking that is because they used this, the definition of neighbor, to define who they would be required to love and who they did not have to love. You didn't have to love the Samaritans because they weren't your neighbors. You didn't have to love Gentiles because they weren't your neighbors under their definition of neighbor. And so this lawyer is pushing this, and that's where Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, which I'll leave for you to read. All right, Matthew 23, verses 25 and 26. Matthew 23, 25 and 26. We're almost done. 25 and 26 of Matthew 23 says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also." Wow. So they were all wrapped up in making sure they did all the washings and the cleanings and everything on the outside looked great. Even their appearance, and Jesus begins to tag them on this, their appearance was holy and right, and they, when they appeared in public, everybody knew that was a Pharisee. Look, there goes a Pharisee. And what he's telling them is, you got all the outside clean, but you forgot the inside. If you'll get the inside clean, the outside will clean itself, or will be clean as a result of the inside being clean. So this whole idea that being clean and cleansed and pure, if you will, is not something that is an external thing only. We're not diminishing the external. What we're saying is it has to start from the inside. And once the inside is cleansed, the outside becomes an easy situation. If the inside is clean, then the outside will be cleansed as well. And sometimes as human beings, we get it backward. We want to judge people upon their appearance. And yet sometimes their appearance does not correctly indicate what's on the inside. I've seen some people who look very clean and very pure and very holy, but the moment they open their mouth, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth would speak. And you'd realize in a very quick moment that things were not as they appeared. Let's not be that way. We want to cleanse the inside. We want to be clean inwardly. We want to have a pure heart before God, seeking after Him, loving Him, understanding He loves us and He is for us. And we want to seek after Him. That's why in our core values, Jesus is our passion. See, those first two core values incorporate those two great commandments. I'll get to that in a minute. Let's finish up in Matthew. Matthew 28, verses 1 through 8. Now, this is a little longer than the rest, perhaps. But I think very, very good and very important after we're working through this. And you'll understand it as we go through. Matthew 28, 1 through 8. "Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold," notice this was the first day of the week. Behold, there was a great earthquake. An angel of the Lord descended from heaven, came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. But the angel answered and said to the women, don't be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come, see the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and indeed he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you. So they went out quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to bring his disciples word, all on the first day of the week. The first day of the week. That's why we meet on the first day of the week. We celebrate the resurrection which occurred on the first day of the week. What a great first that is. The first day of the week. I want to draw your attention back to those great commandments just briefly before we sign off for the night. Our first two core values are Jesus is our passion and people are our heart. That's important because we seek God first and we love our neighbor as ourselves. That's what we want to do. That's how we aspire, what we aspire to. We want to emulate those things with everything we have. Those are the two great commandments. And that is where all the law and the prophets hang. That's what helps keep the church together and growing and functioning the way it should. Those are very, very important. And I want to re-emphasize those tonight. Jesus is our passion and people are our heart. We love one another and we love God first. Great admonitions for the beginning of the new year. If you heed to these first and regularly, how do you think these things would impact your spiritual life? How do you think this will impact where you will be in your spirit this time next year? How do you think if you aspire to these firsts, just these, how do you think that will impact the way you live a year from now after 12 months of focusing on the firsts? Just a thought as we're moving into the first of a brand new year. God bless you richly. Thank you for tuning in tonight. It's such a pleasure to have this time. And in fact, it's an honor for me to have this time with you each and every week. I hope that you are well, that you've had a grand holiday time. And I hope that as you're moving into the new year, that you continue to put God first and you continue to love one another, even as Jesus has loved us. Don't forget to hit that like button or that subscribe button in YouTube, like button on Facebook. Make some comments. We'll try to interact the best we can. God bless you richly. And as always, love God first and foremost. Love your neighbor as yourself. Fast, pray, give generously. And now you go and make a disciple. Hello everybody, welcome once again to Midweek Encouragement. So glad to have you here tonight. So thankful that you've joined in with us. Please make sure if you're on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button. And if you're on Facebook, you hit the like button. Make comments. We'll try to have a dialogue at the best we can in all of this. Thank you for tuning in. Last week we had a little technical difficulty. I hope this is Wednesday. I think it is. And we're here. It's the last Wednesday of 2022. It's hard to believe that. but it is. This coming weekend is going to be very special. And if you're in the Salt Lake area, please come and join us. Saturday night at 9 o'clock. It's a little late, but there's intention behind that. So Saturday night, 9 o'clock, we're going to come together for a service. We're going to sing. We're going to worship. I'm going to bring a message, not a very long message, a short message. We're going to partake of communion together. Then when we're finished there, we're going to make our way into another part of the building and have a great time playing games and fellowship and food, and just it's going to be a grand time moving into the first moments of 2023. So make sure you're a part of that. If you're in the area, we'd love to have you. It's going to be grand. Please make sure you're there if you can. Tonight, I'm going to do something a little different. This being kind of an odd week in many ways. The week between Christmas and New Year is always a bit different. And with Christmas and New Year's both falling on Sunday this year, it's kind of interesting. There's no service this Sunday, by the way. We're doing everything on Saturday evening, and we want you to have time with your family on Sunday. But it's just an odd week. And so rather than do my normal work that we've been doing and looking at Jesus as our example, as our rabbi, and try to see him in that first century context. Rather than do all of that, tonight I just want to take you on a short Bible study trip. Maybe you'll get something out of this. Maybe it'll help you a little bit. With the first of the year coming up, with a lot of the things that happened there. I know there's New Year's resolutions. I know there's various things that we do to kind of get us a kickstart. It's like a new start. It's a fresh. It's a first. I got to think of first and how often first is mentioned in the Bible in a meaningful way that would actually have an impact on us. It turns out, at least in the New King James, there's over 450, 460 some odd mentions of the word first. I'm not going to go through all of those tonight. We don't have time for that, and you don't have the patience, nor do I, to go through all of those. So I thought, well, let me narrow that down. Let me look in the New Testament. The New Testament has some 160 some